You're listening to the Chillin' with the Dogs podcast, where we talk sports, mostly football, and a lot about the Browns. Our episodes drop Friday mornings. Remember to like, comment, and subscribe. The more we hear from you guys, the better our podcast can be. All right, now let's get into it. Welcome into Chillin' with the Dogs podcast. This is your host, Justice, and I'm doing it solo dolo this week. Dad's out of town. He had a job up in Detroit he's taking care of, so it's only me this week, which means it's going to be a little bit shorter of a podcast. But I'm going to break down the Colts game, give you guys my thoughts about it. It was a crazy game. I think you probably heard plenty about it throughout this week, but that was a fun game to watch. I was definitely my reaction to that game during the game itself was pretty priceless. I almost destroyed my water bottle, but we won the game. And every win counts exactly the same. The stats, the score doesn't matter, a win's a win. So I'll break down that a little bit. I'll talk about the upcoming game here with the Seahawks, and then give you some of my thoughts about the league so far this year, and then get into some of the games I'm excited for this week. But starting off with that game, that Colts game, it was incredible to watch. I think there was 8 different league changes. I was watching it with, Dad and the dogs, and I, as a fan, you always want to have the game kind of be out of reach. You want to be able to feel like you're coasting, especially going into like the fourth quarter. You want to feel like the game's put away. All you got to do is rely on the defense to make stops, the offense to run the clock out, but that was not how that game went, which makes them exciting. The score ended up being 39-38. Browns victorious on a late last second touchdown run by Kareem Hunt, and it couldn't have been a tougher game for both sides. The Browns won by a couple inches. I mean, it was that tight. I didn't think it was going to be that tight. If you listened last week, Dad and I both, thought that with our defense, it would be, a suffocating defense that would hold them to limited yards, and, we could win that pretty easily. But the Colts came out and played and put on a good show, and honestly, they haven't been having a bad season at all. I think they ended up getting a little bit over 450 yards of total offense, which, our defense really hasn't given up anything close to that this year. So that was definitely something I think we weren't really prepared for. Both Dad and I, the first podcast, it said that, kind of was a little bit of a trap game, a game that, we could easily have let slip away. And especially since we were coming off of that San Francisco win, those games are classic trap games, but they found a way to win. And that is very, very cool, because that is not something you see the Browns do very often. Usually in those scenarios in past years, that game gets away, and, we'd be sitting here now at 500 rather than 4-2. And, if you had asked me before the season, if we started off 4-2, if I would have been happy, I would have been ecstatic. I gave my prediction. I was very, very confident with my answers, maybe a little bit looking through it through the fan lens, but 4-2 is not a bad start at all, especially through everything that we've been through so far. Losing our leader in Nick Chubb, having the Deshaun Watson injuries, having Joel Bitonio out at certain points in the season, losing Jack Conklin. People have had to step up, and I think the team as a whole is running very, very well. I think, as everybody's been talking about this week, the biggest question we all have is, what's going to go on with that quarterback position. And I think that's something that I don't think we're going to get a lot of clarity on. Honestly, if I had to make a wager, I would say I don't think that Jacoby's coming to rescue us anytime soon. I don't think that this Deshaun Watson injury is going to be resolved in, even maybe the next 2 weeks. So I do think PJ is going to be our starter here for at least the next couple of games. With that injury that Deshaun sustained, I was a pitcher growing up. Anything that goes on with your shoulder, especially rotator cuff, that is a very, very bad injury to have for any position that throws the ball. especially being in the throwing shoulder. And with all of the confidence problems, not problems, but from the outside looking in, well, I'll call them confidence problems before with Deshaun, having not played in so long and only getting a couple of starts so far this season. I think that his confidence is not all the way back. And I think the worst thing you could do is put him out there with shaky confidence and not have confidence that he can drive the ball. I think that's a terrible position to put him in. So I think right now, the defense, we got 2 games here. The Seahawks are, they aren't chumps. They're a really good team. So I think this game is going to have to be won on the backs of the defense. And, hopefully BJ and the running backs we've brought in are able to, pick up a couple of good plays here and there, get us some scores, and put us in a position to win that game. But I think that this game is going to be very, very difficult. And then the Arizona game, they've kind of been feisty this year, a lot more so than I thought they would be. So that game I kind of wrote off as an easy win early in the season. But, given where we're at, I think that game will also be a little bit harder than I originally anticipated. But I think it's going to be similar. I think we have a good enough defense right now that can help get us through this period where we have some quarterback adversity. And then going forward, I guess what I should say is I just think that Deshaun, if we are trying to make a postseason push, we have to have him. And we have to have him in form. He's got to be, maybe not top 10 quarterback level, but he's got to at least play average, something you've heard Dad and I say all year long. And I am, as you guys know, a big advocate for Deshaun. My best friend went to Clemson, and I spent a couple of years in Clemson. Deshaun Watson is everything there. And being surrounded by that, I became a fan of his. So even though he is now the Browns quarterback, which naturally makes me a fan, I've always been a fan of his since college. So I am hoping that he turns it around. I think that it's something that he can do. I've seen him do it before. I've seen him play at an incredible level before. And now I don't have Dad to tell me that's not going to happen. So I'll get it out here now. I think that Deshaun, is still in that period. He's had several bad breaks where, he really never got able to get started last year. This year he's been struggling with the injuries. And, as a quarterback, there's so many hard things to get through playing quarterback. There's so many challenges. So the one thing that you really, usually can count on is a consistency in your health and your body. But yeah, that hasn't been the case this year. So I think for him, the most important thing is to get him healthy, get him right. Hopefully, say he misses the next 2 games or even 3 games. Take that time, get healthy, and then he'll have several games before hopefully we're in the playoff picture. Several games where he can start feeling himself, start getting in, to a good rhythm, and then from there, hopefully he's hitting his peak once the postseason starts. So as far as Deshaun goes, he didn't really get a chance in that Colts game to really show anything. I think he played 12 snaps and only had 5 attempts. And obviously, as we all saw, it didn't look like the Deshaun we've seen. He didn't look like he had any oomph on the ball, be it the injury limiting him or him limiting himself mentally because he knows he's injured. So as far as that goes, I'll pivot into how the team played as a whole during that game. I think PJ, he didn't have an amazing game by any means. He ended up having below a 50% completion percentage, no touchdowns and 1 pick. If you read those stats, you think, oh man, he had a horrible game. But I don't think that was the case. I think that, he made a couple of plays here and there, especially late in the game in that last drive to put us in a position to win. And for a backup, that's really all you can ask for. He put him in a position to win. He made the throws that he absolutely had to have. And, some of the turnovers and stuff are going to happen with the backup, but they weren't egregious enough to, throw us off track. So, all in all, I think PJ had, a decent game. That secondary played our receivers a lot tighter than I thought they would. Looking back at the film, there were people open. It always happens. There's people open there and miss. David Njoku and Elijah Moore are two of those that always seem to be open. And, that just happens. But I think all in all, he played a good game. He didn't try to feed Amari Cooper. Everyone always talks about how you got to feed Amari. I'm okay with him not doing that. Amari was double covered in that game almost the entire time. So I'd rather PJ go with where the ball is supposed to rather than, rely on your number one guy to make plays. Granted, that's what they get paid for, but I was fine with how he played, and it came out to be a win, so you can't say too much about that. One thing that definitely this year has thrown me off, and I know we lost Chubb, which is a huge part of the run game. That it maybe is an understatement. I mean, you can't lose the best running back in the league and expect to continue being, one of the best rushing offenses in the league. But there was not a lot going on other than that long touchdown run that Jerome had early on. Jerome ended up having 74 yards on 11 attempts, 69 of those coming from that one rush. So I think that, I don't even want to do that. I guess that'd be 0.5 yards per rush he had other than that one. So that's not great. Kareem ended up having 34 and 2 touchdowns. And the yardage isn't really there, not something that we're used to. The overall stats look something like we're used to, but if you actually get into it and look at the individual plays and watch them, the rushing attack doesn't look the same, and we're not averaging the same that we usually do. So I think that's one reason why our offense is struggling so much this year. I think we are the 31st offense in the league, and a lot of that I think is attributed to the run. Last year with Jacoby, we're a top 10 offense. This year, we obviously, like I said, we're second to last. So I think there's endless amounts of factors to that, be it injury, be it loss of personnel. We did get Hunt back, but he's not the same Hunt we're used to. He's also dealing with injury, but he's not the same Kareem we saw, a couple years ago, running guys over and bouncing off everybody. So I think that's one big factor why you see the offense having some of the problems it does. Luckily, we have a great defense to help mitigate some of that. But I'm hoping, and I was listening to Cleveland Browns Daily this week. They were talking to Joe Thomas about why the rushing attack doesn't look the way it normally does. And Joe Thomas was explaining, the zone run scheme, the outside zone run scheme, and how that it's not like a team that just runs the ball right up the middle. It's designed to have more explosive plays, and you will take, rushes for a loss of yards. That just happens. So I think it's a couple of different factors. I think it's partially you got a couple, Jerome Ford, and which I don't believe he's playing this week, but Jerome Ford, some of our other running backs, Pierre Strong, some of the other guys we brought in this week. I don't think that they've had a ton of opportunity in a zone rushing scheme. And I think that is one thing that goes into it. I think it's the health of our defense, or our offensive line. I think that goes into it. And maybe there's some regression in the interior of the line too that's causing it. I love Joel Bitonio, Posick, and Wyatt Teller, but there's been a lot of pressure up the middle this year. So it could be a bevy of different things, but I think if we can start getting those things straightened out, and maybe even not have like the rushing attack we're familiar with, where we're picking up 10-yard chunk plays all the time. If we're just not losing yards, I think that will catapult the offense. I think that is huge for us because our entire offensive attack schematically should be based off the run and play action. So I look to that to get better throughout the season, especially as these guys get a little bit more time in the zone rushing scheme. And, we just kind of get used to playing together. But all in all, Jerome, Kareem, Pierre, the overall stats look pretty decent. Our running backs got 3 touchdowns. That looks great. But if you break down and look at the actual plays and how they all went, I think there's still more there. And I think they would even say that. I think that they feel like there's definitely more that they could get, in the rushing attack. And I know the line feels the same. Moving on, we'll talk a little bit about the receivers. Elijah Moore was our leading receiver with 59 yards on 4 catches. It wasn't a huge day for the receivers, which has kind of been a little, other than Amari, that's really been the theme throughout the season. No one's really gone out and put up freakish yards, which for me, I think Dad always talks about it. He always talks about how we watch KC or we watch some of these other teams like Miami, and their receivers are always wide open. It's always so easy. And with us, it's never easy. It feels like you're always getting contested catches. And I don't know why that is. I do watch the film and I see people open. It's just like we're missing them. And you guys have probably heard me talk to Dad about it, where I'll say that, maybe these guys are third in progression, but I don't know. It's something that I don't really have a great answer for because there are guys open, but not to the extent that some of these teams have. I don't know if that's scheme. I think it is. I think it's scheme based. I think it's also a Browns thing. Honestly, it feels like the Browns are entirely different than any other team when it comes to luck or any of these things. That sounds like a Browns fan to say that, but I watch some of these teams like Kansas City, which that's not a great team to compare it to because that's one of the best offenses ever operated. But you watch some of these professional teams and there's guys just open all the time, and that never seems to be the case for us. So I don't know if that's something that maybe that's because our receivers just aren't that good. I don't think that's the case, but maybe our route running's not that good, or we don't have that much speed, or can't get separation, whatever it is, scheme. That's something that I would take a hard look at because the easiest throw in the world is to a guy that's just wide open, And wide open in the NFL isn't like what it is in high school or even in college. College, guys are running wide open, but in the pros, you get 2 yards. That's wide open, and that's never the case. We got guys draped on people, so I don't know. I think that that's one thing that the Browns can look to improve upon and self-scout as the season goes on. But I think the offense didn't have a bad day. They didn't look like a well-oiled machine by any means, but they put up enough points to win the game. That was a high-scoring game, and our offense didn't really play that well. I think a lot of that was attributed to how good our defense was playing. At least, making plays to put us in positions to gain points, which if your defense is giving up, almost 500 yards, the one thing that you can tip your hat to is, well, they got 4 turnovers. They put us in positions to score. The special teams is playing amazing this year. So, man, if we could just get the offense rolling, this team would be so scary. But that might be something that we see as the season progresses. There's a lot of pieces and moving parts that, can either play, it's easy to say, but they could, play better, scheme better, get more time together. There's tons of different things that could help that. But let's get to the fun part. Everybody, if you listen to either local radio or national media, has been talking about the Browns defense over the past couple of weeks. And man, they didn't have their best game by any means. They gave up, as I've said, plenty of yards. And at times, Gardner Minshew looked amazing. But we just made some plays, and Myles Garrett made several that just put us in a great position. That defense is so fun to watch. They did very well in certain areas, but we just had, or I'm talking about the Colts. Their O-line was in several spots really good, but then some spots our defensive line just destroyed them. One of those people was Jordan Elliott. He had an amazing game in my opinion, and that is awesome to see because he's one of those guys who's been around for the past couple of years. We've all been kind of waiting to see him take the next step, and it seems like he might be on the way to doing that, which is very, very exciting because he's a young guy, and it would be awesome to have, one of these younger defensive tackles step up and be able to be with the team for a long time, be someone that, is worthy of being on that line with Myles. So, getting to see him have a good game was just awesome for me. Obviously, the entire nation's been talking about Myles this year, and especially after that game, you heard a lot of DPOY stuff, and for good reason. The dude is a freak, and he played that way. I mean, you heard about that blocked kick. That was crazy. The strip sack was huge. I think a lot of that, he's always had all that in the bag. We all know that. But now that he's surrounded by all these guys and he's got a defensive coordinator that he, loves, I think it's awesome to see. And I think that's a lot of the reason you're seeing him be as successful as he is this year. He's awesome. But that defense played very well, in my opinion. They made the plays they needed to put us in a position to win. We didn't have many turnovers. I think we're at the bottom of the league in turnovers going into that game, and we ended up getting 4. That is exciting to see. If we can continue to get turnovers, that defense would be almost unstoppable. Especially if we return to form and hold, teams like we were. So, I've talked plenty about the defense over the last couple of weeks. I'm kind of just reiterating the same things. They're one of the best defenses I've ever seen, and it's so cool to see because I feel like that's Browns football right there. That's AFC North football. Play good defense and run the ball. And unfortunately, we're not running the ball like we usually do, but the defense is finally something that you can be incredibly proud about. And a lot of them, we did have a lot of people we picked up this offseason. Zadarius, who got his first sack. That was awesome. I thought he played a good game. Dalvin Tomlinson had another good game. Juan Thornhill. We picked up a lot of big pieces this year, but a lot of the guys who are excelling are homegrown. Grant Delpit is having a career year. He's playing like an all-pro right now. That's a draft pick. JOK, obviously, we drafted. Jordan Elliott, pretty much all the secondary other than Thornhill. Those are all hometown Browns guys, and that is awesome to see. Some of these guys that you've invested a lot into, finally playing the way that you intended them to when you drafted them. So that is very exciting as a Browns fan to see. It makes you excited. So I think, and then lastly, I'll wrap up kind of talking about this game. Special teams is playing at an elite level. I think we are the second rated special teams unit in the league right now. Don't quote me on that, but I'm pretty sure we're top. I think we're the second best. It's at least top 5. But Dustin Hopkins is a weapon. He made, I think, his career long at a 58-yarder. Made 4 field goals. It was perfect. I think that was a huge addition. We talked early on in the podcast about Cade and the kicking woes. Being able to shore that up is huge for us, especially right now when our offense isn't scoring the touchdowns as easily. Being able to, get within. I mean, now Dustin Hopkins, maybe if you get him inside the 50, that's points, which is crazy because everything, hearing about him early on, everybody said, well, he's good, inside, 49 yards, but you get to 50, you're kind of pushing it. So for him to be overachieving in that is amazing. He's playing at an all-pro kicking level. So that's cool. Corey Bjorkes, I never pronounce his name right. Bjorkes is playing very well as always. I haven't said on the podcast, I don't believe, but I always tell Dad I think that he's one of the best punters in the league. He averaged 54 yards a punt, which it's great to see. I think our special teams with Bubba Ventrone at the helm has much improved this year. And I think that's huge. You need all three, operations to run smoothly to play good football. And right now, I believe we have 2 of those that are working very well. And, the offense, I think there's still time for it to come around. I think that we need to get healthy because Jerome, like I've said, Jerome Ford's still injured. A lot of the guys that now have to contribute to that offense to be successful are injured. So I think we get healthy. We get some more time playing together and scheme it. It's hard to make changes like that in the middle of the season, but if they can make the scheme a little bit better, I think that offense can turn it around. We were a top 10 offense with Jacoby at the helm last year. Granted, he was playing out of his mind, but you've seen that is something that can be attained. So I think it's just getting that right. Because there's not too much different in terms of scheme from last year. Moving on. Actually, you know what? I want to say one thing. I didn't give the Colts enough credit. Jonathan Taylor played a great game. He looked like the old Jonathan Taylor, which I did not expect to see. They ran the ball whenever they seemed they wanted to, which was weird to see. We did get stops, but they ran the ball much better than I thought they would. Gardner Minshew played a very good game. Now, granted, he gave up several costly turnovers. That was obviously the change in the game, the reason why the Browns won. So it's hard to say he had a good game because of that. But as a back, because he's also a backup, I think that he played a very good game. He looked amazing in several spots and ended up, I think, over doubling his rushing totals for the season in that one game. And just played in a way I did not anticipate. So shout out to Gardner. He played a great game. The receivers played very well as well. I think their defense played great. And I keep saying that's the last thing, but one thing I would be remiss if I didn't talk about was some of the calls late in the game. A lot of people have been talking about the calls late in the game, especially the pass interference late with the uncatchable ball. And then I'm blanking on the other one, but I know there was one more. I think it was a hold or something. But those calls don't usually go the Browns' way. I saw a lot of memes this week about how the refs are finally giving us kind of what's owed, kind of paying us back for some of the bad calls over the years. I think it's due, but you hate to win that way. And my broken water bottle happened, or it didn't break, but that happened during one of those calls. So that goes to show, we would have lost that game if we didn't get some of those calls. And Jim Irsay, you know, tweeted as much. He, he tweeted out to his Colts fans saying the NFL apologized for some of the missed calls this week. That's obviously something he's going to get fined for. But, it's looking at some of those calls, they were debatable. That ball, in my opinion, is uncatchable. If it was me, I would have picked up that flag. But, I'm not gonna be upset by it. That gave us an opportunity to win. Whereas otherwise we wouldn't have. We would have lost. So that Colts team I didn't give enough props to. They came to play, and it was an amazing game all the way around. I mean, you can't add 8 lead changes. That's incredible. So I am curious to see how they continue throughout the season. But all right, so let's switch gears here. We'll start talking a little bit about the upcoming game this week, playing the Seahawks, which I hate playing the Seahawks. That I do like them. I used to hate them, but I went to Seattle a couple years back, and whenever I go someplace, I always I'm a sucker for some reason. Whenever I go somewhere, I'm like, oh yeah, they're cool. I like them, but I used to hate the Seahawks. And honestly, this team kind of scares me a little bit. I do not remember what I probably said this was a win early on in the year when we were doing our predictions. But this game's a little bit worrisome for me, especially with the state of our team. They have a great offense, and they do have a lot of, they have a lot of great defensive pieces. They have stars all around, and they're young, much like the Browns. They feel a lot like the Browns, with a better offense, in my opinion. They've got 2 really good running backs. They've got Walker and Zach Charbonnet, both of which I think are going to be good running backs for a long time in the league. Kenneth Walker almost won me my fantasy league last year, so he's definitely very good. I think we have to shore up the problems we had last week if we're hoping to contain those guys, because that could be a big issue for us. And also, too, their receiving core is amazing. And they're young. But DK, I'm not sure yet if he's playing, but DK, has been an All-Pro before, or at least he's at least been a Pro Bowler. Tyler Lockett, he's an amazing vet. And then Jackson Smith and Jigba, that's a really good top 3. That's easily a top 10, top 3 in my opinion in the league. So they have all the weapons. They also play in 12 personnel, I think almost more than anybody else in the league. So they definitely use their tight ends. And I think they have Noah Fant and Will Dillesley is their main 2 tight ends. So luckily, I think that's something we can defend relatively easily. We have good linebackers, coverage linebackers. So I think that's one strength that we have in our defense is we should be able to help mitigate some of their success with their tight ends. But then Geno Smith had a huge transformative year last year, revived his career, and is also having a pretty good year this year. Not quite to the extent he did last year, but he's playing very well. So that offense is definitely scary, but our defense has showed how good it is. There's honestly, as much as teams scare me, that defense helps me sleep a little bit better because I think we match up pretty well with them. Our second, if their receivers are 3 deep and are good, obviously our secondary, our corners are 3 deep and good. I think we match up well there. If our rushing defense plays like it did, early in the season, I think that would be huge and be able to stop them. I think if we can show that we can stop the run early, that's a huge advantage for us because they like to run the ball instead of play action. And so if we limit the opportunity for them to do that, I think that puts us in the driver's seat. Now on defense, they drafted, I'm blanking on his name, but they drafted a corner this year out of Illinois, and he's playing very, very well. They have two really good young corners. Bobby Wagner's back. So they've got, great pieces. And if Deshaun was playing the way I know he is, and we were at full strength on offense, I think I would say we probably could somewhat take it to him. But with our health concerns on offense and the play so far this year, I'm a little bit worried. I think that whoever wins the turnover battle in this game is going to put themselves in a prime position to win. Like I said, both their corners are young and they're very good. So I think keeping the ball safe, not throwing interceptions. And I know this sounds like an easy thing to say, but if we protect the ball and control on defense, I think we're going to be in a very good position to win. I think we just need to do what we did last week. The offense needs to make the plays they need to put up the points we need. Defense kind of, stays the same. And it would be great to see plenty of turnovers again, but continue to do what they've been doing, and I think we'll be in a great position to win. I think this is going to be a lower scoring game, though. If I had to predict it, I would probably say I think the Browns win this one 24-20. I think it's going to be very, very tight, but I have a lot of faith in them, especially, they won against the Colts in a game that as important as the San Francisco game was to build confidence, I think the Colts game, you could say, is just as much so, because you had that back and forth the entire time. And that team, years past, wouldn't have won that game. So to see that you can have a back and forth and win a game that had 8 lead changes and come out victorious, I think is huge for your confidence. Stacked on top of the fact that you beat what many are saying is, the best team in the league before, last week or the week before with the 49ers. That confidence has to be very, very high for that team. So I think that's going to put them in a good spot. The one thing that worries me the most is outside of all the matchup, personnel, scheme, all of that, the one thing that bothers me and worries me the most about this game is the fact it's on the West Coast. It's always hard going west and playing for the Browns. It's a 3-hour time difference, so I think the game's at 4:05. It's going to feel like, a 7:05 start, I believe. So, +2, I've heard that the conditions for that game are not going to be that great. So, that's probably the thing that worries me the most. Browns going west a lot of times isn't the best. So, hopefully, that isn't too much of a factor in this game, but that's one thing I would keep my eye on, especially if you're betting this game. This game, obviously, I wouldn't bet. I'm not really a gambling man. And if I was a gambling man, I would not bet on this game. I think it could go either way. Obviously, like I said, I think that the Browns are going to win, but that might be the Browns fan in me. But it could easily go either way. And if our defense wasn't playing the way it has all season, I would probably give the Seahawks the edge because they're not a bad team. This is going to be a fun game to watch. I hope it's a fun game to watch because I think these are two relatively evenly matched teams. We'll see. We'll see how it goes. All right, so moving on. I'll talk a little bit about some of the games that were played this week, mostly because I think a lot of the games this week aren't that good. But last week we had some games that I did not anticipate seeing coming. We'll start with the Bears. I did not anticipate them, winning that game. Starting, I don't even remember the guy's name, to be honest. But the quarterback, without Justin Fields, I did not see them winning that game. They pulled it out though, so it's cool to see a lot of these backup quarterbacks pulling it out. Josh Dobbs has done it a couple times this year. He's a starter on that team, but career backup. There's been some guys this year who've pulled it out. There's just been an incredible amount of parity in the league this year. I think I heard someone say it this week. The league has now proven that any given Sunday actually exists. There's games that people are winning that, a lot of us don't expect or feel like they have no business winning. Another game like that this week was the Patriots beating the Bills. Did not see that coming. The Patriots have been struggling a lot this year. Luckily, we don't play them because we never play them well. But I did not anticipate them going in and beating, Josh Allen. Dad and I were kind of flipping back and forth on that, and we were asking ourselves how that was the case. And, the Bills tried to make a comeback, but it seemed like every time they did, they were answered. So, surprising game. Lots of surprising games this week. Another one that did not go the way I anticipated. I thought that I'm talking about the Ravens and Lions. The Ravens smoked the Lions. I did not think it was going to go that way. I didn't necessarily think that the Lions would win. If I had to bet, I would have thought they would have. But, I thought that game would have been a lot closer and maybe even more, high scoring. The Ravens did their part in it. I didn't expect the Lions to go down like that. They've been having a great season so far. Seem to be one of the stronger teams in the NFC, but they just seem to be completely outclassed by the Ravens. And the Ravens got out to a hot start. They went down, scored, held them through to a 3-and-out, scored again, held them to a 3-and-out, scored again. Once you do that, it's being down 21-0. It's hard to come back from. So, that game just seemed to get away from the Lions really, really early on. So, I hate saying it, but kudos to the Ravens. They took care of business. They continue to set the pace in the AFC North. Obviously, they're the leaders right now. And the AFC North in general is just performing much better than I thought they would. And it's not because Cincinnati, it's not because of the Browns. Honestly, it's the Ravens and the Steelers. The Browns are doing their part too. Everyone's playing relatively well, but our division is a slugfest. And I think right now, all the teams are just waiting for someone to lose, which could happen this week. But I don't want the Browns to be the first one to do that. Another one this wasn't an incredibly intriguing game, but another AFC North matchup. Steelers end up beating the Rams, and that game was pretty back and forth as well. I thought that the Rams could pull it out. I was hopeful. Paku was having a good game. He's on my fantasy team. I was hoping that they would win. Basically, when an NFC team plays an AFC team this year, I'm pretty much rooting for the NFC. Just because that puts the Browns in a better spot to go to the playoffs. So I was really hoping, and I hate the Steelers, so I was rooting for the Rams. They didn't quite get there, even though they led most of the day. So that was unfortunate. But moving on, another game that I thought was pretty interesting this week was the Eagles and the Dolphins. I didn't see it going that way. I thought it'd be a little bit closer. The Eagles ended up winning 31-17. Thought that game would be closer. I thought, with how the Dolphins been playing, I thought that they would put up much more points than that. But it seemed like the Eagles kind of had their way with them. It seemed like they were in the driver's seat the entire game and never really let up. So I know a lot of people will ask themselves, well, are the Dolphins who we think they are? Have they really played anybody? Everybody that they've played that's a challenge they've lost to. I don't put too much stock into that. I think that the Bills and the Eagles are some of the best teams in the league, even though the Bills did just lose. Actually, they just won. I'm recording this on Thursday, the day before it comes out. So we had Thursday night football, and Buffalo just beat Tampa Bay, so they're back on the winning train. But for Miami, I think that they're a good team. I really do. I think that offense is scary, especially when they get healthy. They're going to be even more scary. And the Eagles are just that good a team. I mean, between San Francisco and the Eagles, I think one of those two teams are your Super Bowl and your NFC team that's going to be in the Super Bowl. So that game definitely surprised me. That'd be much closer. But we will move on here to some of the games that there wasn't a lot of games this week I was really that interested in, to be honest. I think a lot of these matchups seem to be very one-way, like the Ravens Cardinals, Chiefs Broncos, Bears Chargers. Well, actually, I don't know about that one. Chargers have been underperforming this year, so that might be a good game. But some of the ones that I'm interested in, obviously with the AFC North, I'm interested in the Steelers-Jags game. Hopefully that's the loss that we're looking for. I don't know that it will be. I just don't. The Jags are a good team, but the Steelers' defense is hard to get around. And the Jags have struggled with some of those snot-nosed defenses. So that game I would absolutely not bet. I'm not sure what the spread is on it, but I could easily see that game going either way. I would like to think the Jags can pull that out and help the Browns out a little bit, but the Steelers always seem to find a way. So we'll see. I think that one's very interesting. I'm definitely going to be tuning in to check that one out. Another one, probably the one that I'm the most excited for, is Bengals 49ers, other than the Browns game, obviously, but I think Bengals 49ers is going to be a fun one to watch. Those are, going into the season, two teams who people thought could be in the Super Bowl. Now, the 49ers obviously aren't at full health, but they're a great operation. I think that, we might see Sam Darnold. So I am very curious to see how they play. They've lost 2 weeks in a row, I believe, now. So I might be wrong on that. But let me actually see. They did, yeah. They ended up losing to the Vikings on Monday night. That's right. So 2 weeks in a row for the 49ers. It'd be interesting to see if they can bounce back. I'd be curious to see how the league would react if they lost 3 straight. Would they go from a team that everybody's incredibly high on to dipping? I think even if they lose to the Bengals, they're still a juggernaut. They just maybe had some missteps. So be interested to see. Also could use CMC to score some touchdowns for the fantasy team, but the Bengals, since their early woes in the season, seem to be riding the ship a little bit. They're, I believe, on a little bit of a win streak now. So I'll be curious to see how they play. I think that's going to be a really tight game. Also one I probably wouldn't bet because I could see that going either way very easily. If I had to guess, I think the 49ers would probably win that game. The only reason being is it's their offensive line versus the 49ers defensive line. As you saw in the first game we played this year, the Bengals offensive line struggled with our pass rush. I think you could see that as well with the 49ers and that great pass rush. So I think if they can kind of do what we did to them, I think they'll be in for a good day. Like I said, there's not a ton of games this week that I'm really excited about. A lot of games that seem to be one way. And the ones that aren't are just teams that I guess I don't care that much about. Like Jets, Giants, battle for New York. Either one of those teams that could go either way. Eagles, Commanders is one way. Rams, Cowboys could be feisty, but I see the Cowboys winning there. Packers, Vikings. That's a good rivalry game, but I dislike both of those teams being a Browns fan, being a Bears fan as well. Falcons, Titans, Patriots, Dolphins, Saints, Colts, Texans, Panthers. A lot of those games, either they're not incredible matchups that you're dying to see, or they're one way. So, I don't know. It'll be interesting to see how this week goes. I think it's a terrible week to bet. And if you do, I think you're in for some games that are going to not go the way you anticipate, because I'm seeing a lot of evenly matched teams here. But that's kind of going to wrap it up for chilling with the dogs this week. Like I said, it's going to be a little bit of a shorter one just because I don't have Dad to bounce off of. He's up right now in Detroit doing some work. So he should be back next week to record. Hopefully, if not, I'll just do another one for you guys. But we really appreciate you guys checking us out. And if you are enjoying it, definitely helps if you subscribe to the YouTube or rate us or follow us on Spotify. That always helps, gets us out there, shows people that it's something, worth checking out. And I'm trying to make this a career. So this is great practice for me. But, if it's successful, I can continue doing it. And it's a great opportunity to chill with Dad and, kind of talk about the things we normally do, but make something of it. So if you guys do enjoy it, definitely spread the word. Have all your friends check it out, or follow and subscribe. That definitely helps. And two, one thing that I really would love to see is you guys start commenting on the YouTube videos, because those, if you guys have anything to say, any critiques, anything you guys would like to see, this is, I've done some podcasts before, but this is my first one I'm really trying to do in earnest. So the more you guys talk about it, this is for you guys. I know what I think about these teams and the Browns and everything. I know what I think. So it does me no good. This is for you guys to, interact with people and talk about a game we love. So getting to hear what you guys have to say about it, or any critiques, different kinds of things you want to see, helps the show, and it creates a better product for you guys. So, if you check it out or are listening, I see you guys. Some people are listening. If you're listening, just write a comment. Let me know what you think. If you're enjoying it, what you'd like to see. It would go a long way, and we can make something pretty cool for you guys. Now, since I'm giving you a little bit of a State of the Union here, I am trying to invest in the podcast a little bit. Some changes will come here shortly. Right now, I am doing this on not the best mic. If you saw the setup I got going on right now to record this, you'd probably shake your head. But I am trying to invest in some better mics, get you guys some more quality. I know my voice isn't the most booming, so I'm trying to get some better mics for Dad and I, so you guys get some better audio quality. And also too, for the YouTube version of the podcast, I want to start filming them, and I'm planning on investing in that here soon as well. That's just a matter of time. But I'd like to start filming them for you guys, so that you're not just looking at the thumbnail the entire time. You get to kind of see our reactions. Dad's a very animated person, so I think that would add a lot to it for you guys. Seeing him get heated and everything is one of my favorite things. So that's something that will be coming down the pipeline here pretty soon. But yeah, I'll just say it again. Thank you guys so much for checking it out, spending time with us. This podcast is going to be ever changing. So this is the first, little bit we've done it. But that's going to wrap it up this week. This has been Chilling with the Dogs. Have a good weekend. We'll see you next time. Thank you for listening to the Chillin' with the Dogs podcast. Our episodes drop Friday mornings. You can catch them on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Amazon Music, and a lot more podcasting apps to come. You can also find it on my YouTube page at Justice Garber on YouTube. And if you'd like to support the channel, you could always watch some more videos. I make all different kinds of content. And then you can also like, comment, subscribe, follow my social medias at Justice Garber. But we really appreciate you guys checking it out, and we can't wait to get more for you next week.